Very nice. Ooh, got the camera and my mic.
Shall we get formally started with the microphone? Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We will go through these as normal. We start with the membership of the committee, which I think everybody is aware of, but we will go round and we have two apologies, I believe.
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Lever and Councillor Ward this evening, and no known substitutes.
Okay. So on the committee we have, and we'll go around, myself, Nick Stewart.
Councillor Michael Beston.
Councillor Rodney Downer.
Councillor Carl Love. Councillor Chris Quirk.
Our guest this evening, Rob Gillespie from Island Roads. Good evening, everybody.
I have no idea where all my colleagues, well, some are in Bournemouth, but Councillor Luciano's in Bournemouth, Councillor Stevens is online, I believe.
I'm here.
Yeah, where the others are.
Councillor Stevens is online.
Fabulous. Okay. And get started, we need to do the minutes first of all. But before we do, I understand that I'm supposed to tell you where to run if there is a fire. I've not been told of any fire alarm. The normal exit is that door. The windows are not exits. You know the way down, and you know the collection point, which is across the road out of the entrance. We have our minutes in front of us. If we could deal with those first of all. I have one minor correction, which is under 47, Isle of Wight Cultural Strategy. We had a discussion and it was under the importance of developing skilled young people through second and tertiary educations. Does anybody else have any corrections to the minutes? Excellent. Could I have a proposer to accept those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Quirk, and thank you, Councillor Beston. Okay, let's move on. Right, it says progress on outcomes and recommendations from previous meetings. I cannot see any recommendations come out, so therefore I cannot report on any recommendations. I will try and make sure that there are some recommendations coming out of here so we can follow those up for the next few meetings. We now move on to the very first item, which is the acquisition strategy. Now, councillors will be aware that we are going to go round as usual to make sure that you all have an opportunity to speak. I would just like to raise the very first question simply because it gives us a chance to get started and on thought about it. I've gone through the acquisition strategy in paper and I'm grateful for the work of the officers and the responsible cabinet member for this as well. It's something which we've wanted for some time. My first question is, I assume that I would have to address that to Councillor Jordan. Sorry, apologies. Councillor Jordan, sorry, simply because I can see you doesn't mean I shouldn't address it to Councillor Stevens, who is online. Councillor Stevens, I do apologise for not going straight to you. So the question is, obviously for you as the Cabinet Member to lead with. You will be aware that I have made it very clear that as Chair of the committee, what we're looking for is scrutiny in this particular case and development of policy. That scrutiny means that we would ask that questions are answered simply and straightforwardly, so that we as the scrutiny committee can consider next steps. Okay, so my question for the acquisition strategy is, given the 6 strategic priorities which are addressed in here, can the council explain why it is only addressing housing for those in temporary accommodation? It's only addressing homelessness.
I can. It's because at this moment in time, due to the fact that we had an amendment at a budget meeting, I think it was prior to you, Chairman, coming into council, where £1 million was taken out of the proposed housing budget. We haven't got money to go out and acquire and, if you like, fund the first year. And the Section 151 officer has always said that we have to. It's got to wash its face, and it can't cause a drain on the outgoing revenue side of the budget. Now, by working it this way, we are trying to bring forward, and I know Dawn's got more information on this, but trying to bring in more of what the Isle of Wight Council spends, and you will find in various pages of the strategy reference to the amount of outgoing funding, and that is and it's not coming down, as you see, over from the present year through to the coming years, and we are looking to try and assess and make good a case to the Section 151 officer, which actually says that we can utilise funding because we are going to save money in the long term. And I don't know, Dawn, if you've got anything else to add to that. Chair, I'm not taking the play away from you, but if Dawn's got anything else to add, that it might be relevant.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Can I speak to, I understand Dawn Lang was possibly going to add something at this stage?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that I accept your point that this is only covering one of the strategic priorities, but I think it's a starting point for the council in relation to moving forward in relation to its ambitions to deliver housing. So it's really just a starting point and something which evidences how we can address some of the issues of homelessness.
Thank you for that. What I'd like to do now is I have quite a number of questions regarding this particular issue, but I would prefer to allow councillors of greater experience than me, and certainly a great deal of outside knowledge, to ask what they will. So I would start with Councillor Beston.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There seems to be 2 sets of figures here. Please do explain. So we've got a homeless accommodation, and the strategy in front of us is to deliver 100 homes per year for 3 years. Page 24, it's within the paper. Thank you. Yeah. So the strategy in front of us is to deliver 100 homes over a 3-year period. So my question is, how far does that go to get us to a place where we really want to be as regarding taking care of our homeless people?
Just trying to get rid of.
Councillor Stevens,
Yeah,
you
can you hear me?
answer that?
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute. We were trying, and we are trying to be realistic with our objectives here. And initially we put even a lower figure down, but we've been talking cross chamber to other members, and it was felt that we should be more ambitious, and that's why we've gone for the figure of 100. What I would say is that, as Dawn has already said, this is a starting point. Am I happy? No, I'm not. And I don't think that we should be content at all. And I know that is possibly the feeling across the chamber. But we've got to start somewhere. This is, I believe, the first acquisition strategy that the council's had in recent years, if they have one before, for housing. It's something that we've had to put together. As members are aware, housing was in disparate places throughout the council. We were pulling that all together to try and make it more cohesive and giving a way forward. But you're right with the figures. But the figures displayed on homelessness and what have you, and the amounts of money there are actually indicative of, as I said, the upward trend in the outgoing revenue, and that's what we're trying to take through to our colleagues in finance, to let them see that if we have X amount of money, we will be able to save over £1 million in plus in the near future. I'll leave it at that. But as you are right, there is a discrepancy. But the thing is that we've got to start somewhere, and there's all sorts of solutions or possible solutions to our housing problem. One, we've relied too much on the private sector in the past to bring forward affordable housing, and indeed our RPs, our housing associations, to do likewise. So, and some of those haven't been in operation on the Isle of Wight producing housing or new housing for a number of years. So we're battling on all front, and thankfully we've got Dawn as the strategic housing manager to take that fight forward at an operational level, as well as a strategic level, of course. Do you want to come back, Michael? Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. I appreciate responding to that. I'd now like to bring in Councillor Downer.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd just like to ask about the figures on page 3-4, page 24. It's a snapshot of the accommodation in use at 31st of March 23 provisional. Is there any absolute up-to-date information on that? Because it says provisional. And also, in the second column, it's got caravan holiday let. Presumably, those numbers of caravans in the holiday lets are unavailable in the summer. Thank you.
Could I pass that to Dawn, please? Because she'll be more up to date with current figures.
Yeah, I'll answer the question. So first of all, I think those are the final figures, and so I probably should have taken out provisional, but I wrote that before, so apologies for that. In relation to the question around caravans and holiday lets, no, we do have access to those properties over the summer.
Thank you for that. If I can move on to Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just becoming a bit alarmed, really, to be honest, because 3 times tonight we've heard the word starting point for the council. Starting point. It was a starting point under the previous administration. It's a starting point under this administration, and it's still a starting point now. And that's about covering how many years? Too many years. Too many years. And 100 houses, whilst it's a figure, and by the sounds of it, it's a difficult figure to reach, which it should actually be an easy figure, because I consider that to be a really small figure. I'm just wondering where we're going. But my main question is around the funding, because it seems as though the budget is the main sticking plaster for moving forward. So what is it that we're doing besides the measures that you have indicated, Councillor Stevens, to gain some additional money, so that in actual fact, instead of being at the starting point, we could actually be at the end of the starting point.
As you may well know, Councillor Love, this has been a trial to put forward the case for housing and getting the margins right for a truly affordable housing for Isle of Wight people. And we're not after profit margins here. We're after break-even margins if we could. You will find with some of the private developers that are out there, they're finding it very, very difficult. What with labour costs and increased costs for materials. So it is difficult, and it is difficult to try and keep a balanced budget. And I understand where our Section 151 officers are coming from. We don't want to be a Thurrock, Croydon, or Slough. What we need to do is try and move forward positively, but we need a little bit of leeway on this to actually, and that's why the figures were there. The amounts that it cost us in a temporary accommodation are there. Now, if we could make that saving, then that saving alone could actually start to assist us with affording to pay the interest on a Public Works Loan Board starting point, or a financial model. And I'll leave it at that. But that's the thing. The building costs have gone up, labour costs have gone up, and to be quite honest, with mortgage rates increasing, etc., housing is in a static state at this moment in time, not possibly dropping a little elsewhere. I don't know what the island figure is, but I can assure you that it's not the best climate for house building. And to be quite honest, we've got to make sure that we are responsible with the public purse. We need to. What I'd like to see is not our Section 151 officer put his hand in his pocket. I'd like to see our central government putting their hands in their pocket and putting more down to help and assist with the homelessness problem that is not just on the Isle of Wight but throughout the UK.
Councillor Love, can you follow that up, please?
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Stevens, but that didn't actually answer my question. I'm not having a go at the administration or anybody else. I'm actually asking a question. How much money do we actually have in the accounts that we can actually use to move forward now? And because whilst we're hoping that we can, and I agree with the things that you've said, Councillor Stevens, but the point is, I think it's really important to articulate that we're not able to move forward because we don't have any money and we're relying upon other solutions to bring that in. But what do we actually have in the pot now to be able to move forward with so much as building 2 or 3 houses, never mind the 100 houses? So that's the question. It's not a dig at administrations or previous. I actually want to know, and I think the public have the right to know, what money we actually have available right now to build houses. If I said I've got a plot for 5 houses over there, go ahead and do it.
Absolutely, and thank you, Councillor Love. Totally agree with your sentiments. Dawn, have you got any figure there that you've spoken with the Section 151 officer of late on?
I think I can give you some indicative figures. I think we have Section 106 funding. I don't know the accurate figure, but I would say that that's around 500,000. As I said, it is only an indicative figure, so we have that available. Obviously, as previously mentioned, loans have been agreed, so we can access those. And the final piece of, I think, any funding jigsaw will be around external grants. And in relation to external grants, we have accessed external grants of around 800,000, which will be enabling us to progress and purchase properties in this financial year. Does that answer your question?
I think it gives an indication of just how poor we really are, because 800,000 and 500,000 when actually we need millions. And whilst we're getting some money, I appreciate that. What you're actually saying is that the council only has in its pocket 500,000 of 106 funding to do that work. So where are we looking in addition, and are we looking in addition to get more grant money from other things? I don't want to labour the point, by the way. I'm just making the point for so that the public understand that actually this council doesn't have any money. That's the bottom line.
As I said before, Councillor Love, we have to balance the books. We don't want to become bankrupt, as some of the councils up and down the country have, and had to adhere to what central government representatives have done to their facilities and services. We need to try and keep the Isle of Wight governed by the Isle of Wight Council. But what I would say is that Dawn Lang, as the strategic housing manager, is looking at all ways that we can actually access funding. We are a rental provider now, and so we have got the opportunity, when necessary or when it arises, to bid for Homes England grant funding. But we want, most people want more funding. I would like to see the finances relaxed a little bit in the Isle of Wight Council to enable us to start to move forward and gain traction. I'd like to see some joint ventures on the table. There's lots of things that I'd like to do, but the thing is that once again we've got to be responsible with the public purse. But I think you've got an idea now of how tough it is to actually try and pull capital together to take forward for our housing and development side. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Can I just add a rejoinder to Councillor Love's quite reasonable approach? I understand that in East Cowes there's a very, very large development which doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Would you be able to update us on where that has reached?
You mean the Venture Keys area?
Yes, Venture Keys, that's right.
Well, that's been the Regeneration group have been the custodians of that. I believe that there's negotiations are still going on for an extra care facility on the site, as well as other forms of housing. But what I know that Councillor Love is on board with certain elements of this to make sure that we provide what we need to provide, and not what others feel that they need to have on that site. We're fighting the fight to keep everything as a care facility, and make sure that East Cowes gets a facility they deserve. Well, not only East Cowes, but the Isle of Wight. So that's the way that is. But I would like to just touch back on finances for development and housing. We've got some sites out there that we put forward and asked for expressions of interest. Now, if we get funding on those sites, then what I'd like to do is to say, okay, that's ring fenced for housing. But you will find that our finance people have come back with saying, hold on, no, we have calls across the council for funding. And so whilst we would like to see it in the housing and homelessness sector, it's got to go back in the central fund. Now, your views and opinions on that, I'm willing to take forward. And if you think that, like me, you would like to see the money that's coming or could be coming in from development sites from Isle of Wight Council development sites into the coffers of the Isle of Wight Council, would you like to see those going down for housing for the Isle of Wight people? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. I'd like to bring in here Director Ashman, who would be able to give us a little bit more on Venture Keys.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And Councillor Stevens pretty much summed up the position, but for the benefit of the committee, the acquisition of those sites, vacant sites, one with an existing building, one not, was part of a package of negotiations for the acquisition of the Columbine building in that area to protect marine manufacturing jobs. Those sites actually came across at a low value as part of that, with the condition from Homes England that they should be developed for housing. So we've been obviously liaising with Homes England on that. We've also done investigations historically on the viability of the site vis-a-vis council borrowing, and discounted that as an option. So we're currently out of procurement for the two sites to identify a partner to acquire and develop the sites, one for extra care, as has been referenced earlier. Extra care because it was agreed or identified as a suitable site for that purpose in liaison with the population of East Cowes. We, in acquiring those sites in East Cowes, we undertook an engagement strategy on the waterfront sites more generally. Obviously, is very proximate to the new Red Funnel terminal, for example. So seeing this just as a housing site in isolation to everything else wasn't something we wanted to happen. So there was agreement that extra care was right. The procurement of extra care against ordinary housing is a little bit more complex. So in that regard, we've had some legal advice on how to go about that, but we're now in that process. We have a target with Homes England to secure planning permission, to secure planning permission for development of that site by March 2025. March 24, sorry, my apologies, March 24, commencing the development then on March 25. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. That's helpful to know slightly more about that. I think that might be another discussion about what's happening in East Cowes entirely. If I could come back, I understand Councillor Love would like to make an additional comment.
Yes, again, thank you, Chair. It comes back to money again. So the key words for them are things like procurement, which means that we're actually expecting somebody else to pay for the development of that facility, and just highlights the vulnerability of the council when it comes to its finances. I just wonder whether, if actually we talked about this earlier, say, well, living within our existing budgets and not bankrupting the council, but that's a very fine balancing act between not doing something and actually bankrupting most of the people who live in affordable housing, or making them homeless, and bankrupting the council because we don't have the accommodation, which we're then having to purchase in a different way and costing us money, rather than actually, as Councillor Stevens said earlier, we need to turn that negative into a positive by building houses, which generates income, rather than currently not able to do anything because we're frightened of stepping into the unknown, which perhaps we should do. Step into the unknown. If we go bust, we go bust. I know that's not, I don't say that lightly, but if we step into the unknown, then at least we are trying to do something about the problem. Whereas right now, it seems that we're doing nothing other than tinkering around the edges, and we're not getting to the bottom of what needs to be done. Sorry, that's just a comment.
Councillor Love, if you take, thank you.
Talk
Thank you very much. That's actually quite useful. It brings me to one point which I was going to raise, and Councillor Stevens may have obviously Dawn may have a comment on this, which is obviously that the amount of money that we're spending on homelessness is substantial. It's 1.16, I think the figure is in front of us, something like that. Is it not the case that we can apply some of those monies, savings thereof, to housing on the basis that even this limited acquisition strategy would obviously deliver some housing for those people?
It's the case that I've put forward, and I believe Dawn has. I'll let Dawn speak for herself in a moment, but we would welcome the opportunity to actually go forward with that with that representation of the figures and how we can actually attach our homelessness and our outgoings on temporary accommodation, etc., to a business case to actually bring in some corporate finance to our housing situation. I'll leave it at that. But Dawn, I know, has been wrestling with this. I've spoken with the Section 151 officer and indeed other members of his staff with regards to looking at the temporary accommodation funding and trying to utilise that, but also stretching wider than that, Chair, to looking at the hidden costs to social care and other such things that come out from this. Also, in temporary accommodation at this moment, I think we've got 6 children in bed and breakfast accommodation. That's not good. That's not good for our island. It's certainly not good for those young people in education. And really, these are the things that have the knock-on effects. And we're trying to actually take that case forward, as I said, through finance at this moment. Dawn, have you got anything to add?
The only thing I would add is that within the financial criteria at point 7.1, there is reference there to net savings from temporary accommodation being taken into account in the financial appraisals going forward. So that point has been picked up.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the extra information. It hadn't been mentioned within the figure of monies available, and obviously any additional sum, when you add it to a small figure, might make quite a bit of material difference. I'd like to bring in Councillor Quirk here, who's been very, very patiently waiting.
Still patient. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for actually having a strategy that's got some numbers with it that actually sort of gives a direction and where we want to be. I think they're too low, but I think we should have a time scale of over a strategy that runs for 2, 3, 4 years, not just a sort of an amorphous strategy. But, and there's a big but, there's lots of ways to do things, but we're not identifying actually how we're going to do it and what we expect to be delivered from each of those routes. It's sort of like throwing all the balls up in the air and hoping that we catch a few. That's not the way that you would have done it in a commercial sense. You'd actually be identifying where you expect to get the delivery. And I think that's the shortfall. Strategies alone, without a detailed plan about how you action it, are pretty worthless. So I think you know what we need is a document that is something more than this. It's actually a strategy and implementation plan that shows the route to actually delivering. Because too often we have a plan, and at the end of the year we say, oh, we missed the target. Well, if you haven't defined how you get to the target in the first place, you're going to miss it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I think we need to have a more robust look at how we are going to deliver. There's lots of ideas here, and also I think the use of compulsory purchase is expensive if you leave it as the last resort when a building is falling down. That's not the only time that you can use compulsory purchase, and actually looking at houses that are still good should be sort of part of our thinking.
Can I just come back on that then, Chairman?
Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Quirk, you know, you're quite right. But we need a strategy, and then we need those policies put in place to actually support that strategy and take it forward. This is where scrutiny comes in. This is where members floating, as you have done this evening, and it's been a really good discussion, I think, to give us those points, because no man has all the answers. And what we need is, okay, give us some free flowing information. You're quite right with what you've just said, Councillor Quirk, and I take that on board. And I know that Dawn Lang will. But we have some things in process at the moment that aren't quite ready to underpin the strategy. But what we really need to do is get this strategy sorted and put through, so that we've got something that we can actually start to work to. As I say, there hasn't been a strategy until this. Now I'm happy to wait with if you've got recommendations and some form of direction, and I'm happy to take all of those on board. Don't forget, this is still in draft at the moment. The Cabinet hasn't discussed it, so I'm happy to take on board anything you wish to bring forward, and we will, Dawn and myself will evaluate it. We'll probably give you a call back to see what we can make of it. This is part and parcel of actually taking things forward that have been through a scrutiny, quite robust, and let's see if we can get some things that can underpin the strategy to take it forward. I welcome what you say, Chris. Sorry, Councillor Quirk. I'll welcome what you say. Only too pleased to work with you on coming forward with good policies to support a strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. I'd like to invite any additional questions, but I know there are some from councillors. I'd like to start with Councillor Love.
Yes, thank you. I would like to support what Councillor Quirk said. I think actually what we need to do is within the strategy, place some hard and firm targets for the intended outcomes with some timelines if possible. We all recognise how difficult that is sometimes to keep to timelines, but if we don't have an actual strategy which says, and we'll use East Cows as East Cows will be delivered by XXX, although I know that there are some actual outcomes for that particular programme, because that came with a set of delivery timescales, and which was it had to be delivered by X, Y, and Z. And when you have a focused end product to deliver on time, that motivates you to deliver that particular outcome. And so that is what I think we are. Well, there's a lot of talk about East Cows because it has an end target outcome to be delivered, or there's a penalty that we could potentially pay. Now, that model without the penalty at the end is, because that doesn't help us, is the sort of strategy that we should have for most of the things which we're intending to deliver. The difficulty is I'm not entirely sure what it is that we're intending to deliver. So we could say 50 houses in West Wight or East Wight by this date on that bit of land or in that area. And then that motivates people to move forward to work up the funding to deliver that product. But if we don't have those timescales and we don't have that strategy, then it's just an aspiration that just sits there forever and doesn't actually move forward. So my recommendation is just exactly that, sorry, which I'm happy for people to add to, that we do have hard and fast, what did I say, timescale recommendations for specific pieces of work which we think, or Councillor Stevens has said is in the pipeline. Let's identify what's in the pipeline and let's put some timelines against them. Then we've got some accountability from everybody. I don't know if you managed to get that. That's my proposal. Sorry.
Telling people off about not putting their microphone. I didn't put mine. I do apologise. I suspect people will get fairly fed up of my voice eventually anyway. Sorry, Councillor Downer or Councillor Beston, do you have anything to add at this stage? Okay, thank you. Then I'll go straight to Councillor Quirk.
If we have defined the routes of where we want the routes to get to where we want to be, there's always going to be money pressures. But unless you've defined those routes, it's very difficult to get money out of government. Homes England has large amounts of money that they can give, but you've got to sort of tick the boxes for what Homes England will support, which basically is big stuff. And if you haven't defined how you're going to get there, you haven't got the arguments to go to Homes England and ask for that extra money. Last night we had, or just the afternoon, we had a planning seminar that was showing that basically it's not economical for developers to build on the island. Marginally for bigger houses, but not for smaller ones, and not for flats. But that's because you use the model of using a developer. Actually, if you use a model of using a housing company, you change the figures quite dramatically, because a housing company that owned by the council isn't looking for a 20% profit. If you're using council land, that's 25% of the cost of the build. And so there are ways that you can look at it. And I think this doesn't really cover the ways of overcoming the financial difficulties of delivering houses on the island. I think there needs to be some expansion in that area as to how we cover that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Quirk. I think at this stage, I've got another 10 questions. Councillor Stevens, I apologise. What I was planned to do at this stage, because my colleagues have put so much forward, is to go through these briefly and then come back to the Scrutiny Committee as to a way forward at this stage. There are a couple of possibilities which have been discussed generally. So if I ask these, Councillor Stevens, you can respond as you see fit at this stage. I understand that you may not, and Dawn also may not have all of the answers. We don't expect all the answers at this stage, but obviously anything that you can do is always going to be helpful. So to start with, we've mentioned various issues around housing. Has the council actually identified the effects of homelessness on young people in terms of mental and physical health, poverty, education and employment? If we have measured it, it's mentioned briefly here, but I don't think, and it's been mentioned by councillors, but I don't think we've actually identified how bad this homeless problem has become and what effects that homelessness has on our residents. So that's one question. I'll come back to you. I'm just going to give you a couple of possibilities so you can add to those.
Yeah, please do.
So if you hold 1 minute, maybe two. There is a minor point of, it's mentioned here that housing does not have a direct impact on poverty. I wonder whether you'd agree with that. And to come back to housing, it mentions that affordable rents may be required. So what percentage or what level of people do you think of these homeless people who would go into rented property would be able to unable to pay those affordable rents rather than social renting? And if I give you the statistic, we have on the island the third worst ratio of housing available, rented housing available to people on benefit, and that percentage is 0.4%. So basically, for all intents and purposes, people on housing support are closed out of the vast majority of the market. If it would help, you could provide some guidance on those. Thank you.
Thank you. I was busy describing then and missed the second one, but if you could touch back on that. But what I will say is that I haven't got the statistics or the figures to bring forward on children's mental health. I know for a fact that any person that's homeless, any person that is looking to or seeking to find a property to whether it be a flat or what have you, is under extreme and intense pressure. So I would start to look at the numbers that we've got collated through the through children's services, etc., and put that down as a resounding for everyone. It's a one, isn't it, Chairman? You must realise that people living in temporary accommodation are under extreme pressure these days, and it saddens me. I mean, here we are, we're talking about we can't afford this and we can't afford that. My whole thought on it, and it does me no good at all, because if I could have built 200 houses last year, don't you think I would have done? It does me no good to find that one person with a child is in temporary accommodation or seeking or looking for a property to lease. It's got to have. I haven't got the numbers, but I would actually turn around and say how many children are in temporary accommodation, and you must really say that that's got pressures on both them and their education, and indeed, if you like, the way that they view society as a whole. So that's that one. Affordable rent and housing support, etc. Yes, we're not doing enough. We're not doing enough. How can people whether they're unemployed or if they're married couples? And I've had married couples come up to me and say we just can't afford this. Our rent's gone from some £100 into 1,000 plus pounds a month, and they just cannot afford on wages to afford a property. So yes, I don't know if Dawn's got figures on it, but as I say, I think that every one of them, every one of these, whether they're a married couple or whether they're a child with a single parent or in a family, we've all got those pressures, and as I say, it's got to have an effect on children's mental health, and as I say, with our housing support and what have you, we've got to do more. And I look at budget time to say, okay, let's do more, and let's unite across the chamber to say we need more funding to support our homeless and those in temporary accommodation. Fact. And what was the second one? And I'll give you a quick round on that one, Chairman.
I think, Councillor Stevens, you have in your way covered all three questions.
Well, I'm pretty good
as
like
well
that.
as is possible at this stage, and I appreciate your effort.
And if you would like Dawn to come in, I mean, I'm talking as an individual, a councillor that meets as you do every day of the week, people up against it, and people up against it, and they don't just come to a councillor because they like their councillor. They come to their councillor because possibly their last resort. Thank you.
Dawn, you've been pointed at briefly. Have you anything that you could assist us with by way of figures of any sort?
No, I'm afraid I don't have that information with me this evening. The only point I would make would be around the point you made on rent levels. We are obviously mindful of the level of rent and the impact that has on any family or any individual living in properties. We would look to maintain those rents ideally at social rent levels. When we talk affordable, we would be keeping those rents within the local housing allowance. So again, we are mindful of the importance of keeping those rents at the lowest levels we can, but having a regard to the need for the scheme to be financially viable.
Thank you for that. That's slightly more reassuring. Councillor Love, would I like to come in again?
No,
Councillor Love?
I just want to say, really, we're kind of losing our way slightly. This is an acquisition paper, and we need to be talking about the properties for acquisition and things. And whilst the discussions are really relevant, I accept that. We're just losing our way slightly with the questions. I would suggest that we get a written response to those questions so that we can then look at them in more detail later. I think it's really important that we just stay focused on the acquisition part of this.
Thank you for that, Councillor Love. Councillor Jones-Evans was going to add something, and anything is useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to apologise for my late arrival. I've been at work, wanted to come in, so I came in part way through this discussion, and I've just worked out we are in fact talking about the acquisition strategy to alleviate homelessness, which is obviously on the out. It's a follow-up paper strategy from the homeless and rough sleeping strategy. I think perhaps many of the questions that are being, or the sort of threads that you're pulling on, I think probably a lot of the answers are in that big strategy that came before. This is a follow on from that, how we're then going to address it. That's my understanding of it. Apologies if I'm if I've got that wrong. And I was just wondering, I'm sorry, Chair, you said there was a piece in the paper that said housing doesn't have an effect on poverty, or the other way around. I was just concerned that I'd missed that. I wouldn't mind if you could just let me know, and I'll just look at the context of that, just my own mind, if you don't mind, if that's all right, Chair.
Page 17. So number 17 on page 17. While the strategy does not have a direct impact on reducing the numbers of residents, and especially children who are living in poverty. Councillor Love is quite right that we're focusing on the acquisition strategy. What I'm trying to do is actually ensure that councillors and the public and the council itself is aware that there are not only a number of questions about this acquisition strategy, but actually what I would state at this stage is quite a few holes, which unfortunately we need to consider whether this is a recommendation to Cabinet. One of the key points that has been brought up by councillors is that we need very firm targets as far as possible on specific sites, on numbers, and on finances. I have to entirely agree with them. One of the issues that we face tonight is that we may run out of councillors at some stage because of other pressures. Therefore, I would like to, at this stage, bring in one moment after other questions, other comments, of course, is to bring forward an outline suggestion and something which was discussed at the previous yesterday's planning, but was actually relating to our responsibilities for housing as a committee. So I would like to pass over to Councillor Love again.
Yes, I want to support you on point 17. It seems quite absurd, really. Of course, it has an impact upon poverty, does the strategy, and if it doesn't, why doesn't it? So I think that section does actually need to be looked at again. It says whilst the strategy does not have a direct impact on reducing poverty, of course it has a direct impact on reducing poverty if you're placing people from the homeless list into accommodation, especially if those families that are homeless have children and so on. So it does have an impact. So I totally get what you're saying about that. So I would ask the Cabinet to have another look at that particular section.
Thank you, Councillor Love. I'd like to bring in Councillor Jones-Evans again.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yes, I've looked at that, and there is an impact. It says it's not a direct impact, I suppose, because poverty is a much wider thing. But I think it's just it's a bit of narrative, isn't it, to shape it all, rather than actually in the policy itself. But I'm sure Councillor Stevens is more than happy to look at that, given it's his paper. So I know we've got 100. The target's 100 properties a year, isn't it? I would be a bit concerned if we were going to be specific on where and how, because if there's opportunities that come up throughout the year for acquisition in one area, but actually, oh no, we're not looking at that area. We're supposed to be looking over here. Are we actually helping alleviate the situation? So that would be my only question. How specific do we need to be? Is 100 units across the island going to be? Because I think, you know, I've got residents who are in temporary accommodation. They're actually in full-time employment, and they don't necessarily actually want to be where they're living right now. But if there was accommodation elsewhere that was, you know, much more suitable than where they're at the moment, would that necessarily be a barrier for them? So I was thinking that how prescriptive is the committee looking for us to be, and would that have I guess the flip side, would that actually have a negative impact on delivery? So just really a question. And I apologise if I'm not speaking for Councillor Stevens. I'm just, you know, just listening to what you're saying, trying to get a sense of how we can deal with it come cabinet.
Councillor Jones-Evans, you have not surprisingly picked up things really fast, so I appreciate it. There is actually a mismatch, and I didn't raise it before because I think Councillor Stevens may have dealt with it. On page 25, it says deliver and facilitate a programme of 100 homes per year, which I understood to be a general target. And then on the final page of 28, it says deliver up to 50 properties over the life of the strategy. Perhaps Councillor Stevens could confirm, before we deal with the specific points you've just mentioned, perhaps Councillor Stevens can tell us what the actual figure should be in the strategy.
Trying to unmute this is like, you know, I need a tin opener. Yeah. I was, and I stick my neck on the block here, Dawn. I thought it was 100 per year.
Shall I clarify?
You can indeed.
The point with regard to 100 homes per year is the target which was set within the housing strategy. And that is the point made earlier in the paper. So 100 to deliver and facilitate a programme of 100 homes per year was set within the housing strategy. This strategy, specifically for the acquisition of homeless properties, is the target which is set in the action plan at the end, which is up to 50 properties over the life of the strategy. So we're looking at targets in 2 different strategies. Does that help clarify that point?
Thank you. That means I actually got something right for once. I appreciate it. Councillor Love.
Yeah, sorry, I feel as though I'm bouncing backwards. It's only for clarity. I'm not trying to be pedantic. So 100 houses or 100 units per year, starting from when? Starting from when? Because we're not going to deliver 100 houses this year, are we? So does the strategy kick in from next year? That's the first thing. And 50 units, so how was that? Over the life of the strategy. So what is the life of the strategy? So how long is the strategy? So again, this is about how we were talking earlier about hard and fast targets, because they're just loose at the moment. Okay. So we could say, well, we've delivered 50 units over the last 150 years, haven't we? You know, or is it over the next 5 years, which is the life of this strategy or not? I just think it just helps focus the mind, not being pedantic about it, but it helps focus the mind. And I do agree with Councillor Jones-Evans in what she was saying earlier about we should have hard and fast targets, but we should also be able to be responsive to the need, as you've suggested. So we don't want to make it so tight that that's all that we focus on. But you're absolutely quite right. These are the things that we kind of know are coming, but then which we can put timescales against. But if something better comes along in between, which we can deliver quickly, then of course that becomes the priority. That would be my suggestion within the plan, and I think the plan does show some of that. But I'm just thinking that as again, we come back to what we said earlier, if we have hard and fast outcomes intended, then by time scaling them to some degree, at least it focuses the mind. And even if they regretfully are not built, then they will come back onto the agenda to be addressed. They won't just be left and lost. That's, yeah. I think we've spent.
Can I clarify?
Sorry, Dawn, I think you did clarify, and
Oh.
I'll just reiterate it if that's okay, and then you can tell me whether I'm wrong again.
Okay.
My understanding is the overall strategy for housing was 100 homes per year. This particular acquisition strategy is specifically a target of 50 homes over 3 years. It's one of my questions. It's the fact that that gives us a delivery target of 17 homes per year. And obviously that has accompanying effects because obviously given the fallout from the mortgage crisis, there's a risk to a substantial increase in homelessness. And how would we mitigate that risk, given that we're only likely to deliver 17 homes per year? I'm not sure that question can be actually answered at this stage. I think we've got to the stage, the position where you have told us everything that we could possibly use at this stage, and we need to consider what we do. I would like to suggest that we go away, produce some recommendations for this paper, and that this paper for Cabinet, and that Cabinet considers whether or not this particular strategy is adequate for its purpose or for the purpose of homelessness generally. Secondly, I'd like to suggest at this stage, and it has been discussed at length elsewhere, that we take note of the task and finish group on housing, which was produced in 2017. Councillor Quirk will be aware of it because obviously he was one of the major people on it, and that this committee considers whether or not we should take that particular strategy and get it updated to assist the council in our policy function, so that the council will have the benefit of advice led by councillors from housing associations, from housing developers, from homeless charities, and from a number of other key organisations, so that maybe Councillor Love's consideration that we should actually be a little bit more, risky is the wrong word, but ambitious can be pursued. So I'd like to go to the members of the committee at this stage and ask them to consider those two possibilities. We'll start with Councillor Beston.
Chair, more than happy to consider those two possibilities. Further discussion.
Councillor Downer.
Likewise, Chairman.
Councillor Love.
I think I'm happy to do that, but I'm also mindful of officer time. Notice to kind of think about where the resource is, and also the more that we consider, the longer it takes. I just think that we just, we need to be more speedy, more efficient in our deliberations, and I'm not sure that will do it. You're right that it helps inform the debate, but it only informs the debate if we've got the outcome. If the intended outcome is the outcome that matters, not necessarily all of the. So I'm a bit unsure. I feel as though that's a bit long-winded. Let's just get on with making some recommendations now, rather than have to go through a whole process and put officers through.
Thank you for that considered response, Councillor Love. Councillor Quirk.
Not wasting officers' time is important, but actually getting it right is important. There's a lot of background information. Okay, it's 4 years old now when we produced the paper before, but I'm not sure the situation has changed that much, just slightly worse. I'm basically supportive that I think we need to get it right, and if it requires officer time and input to get it right, we need to put the officer time in. But I don't see it as being we make odds for our backs because of the way that local government operates. I used to do some contract work for Procter & Gamble. That was how much paper you could do your report on. 2 sides of A4 paper, and you had to do everything had to be on there. It doesn't always take a lot of words to get a point across, and sometimes brevity is actually more relevant.
Councillor Clerk, you're quite right. I remember writing notes for ministers, and some of them wanted 1 page, and it was big font as well. That's very helpful. I think we've got some movement forward. I think one of the reasons why some of these things were coming out is the concern, even frustration, from a number of councillors around the place, including obviously Councillor Stevens, I know, has been shouting about housing for quite some time, is that for a variety of reasons we have not seen the progress or delivery that we think is absolutely essential. What I have discussed is that we have, as a committee, some space in our work plans so that we could complete anything we do, task and finish group, by the next meeting and bring it back to scrutiny committee to allow everything to go forward and to allow the council obviously to make its own decisions, the cabinet to make its own decisions about the way forward. So that will leave us in the position where A, we produce some recommendations on this particular strategy, and B, we look to a wider group to produce a task and finish report by the next meeting, which I believe is in September, October. Okay, and I agree entirely with Councillor Love that delay is not good. But if we're not seeing anything, a slight delay might actually help. So given that possibility, those 2 possibilities, I'd like to have a proposer and possibly a seconder for that course of action, unless somebody would like to add a further comment, which I believe Councillor Jones-Evans would like to do.
It's just some clarification, obviously, because we talk about housing in general, and then we've got the specific strategy which is on the back of another homeless strategy. So forgive me if I'm wrong, but so you would be putting some recommendations forward to go to scrutiny next week, for corporate scrutiny next week, on this paper, but you want this paper still to be considered by cabinet next Thursday, not to delay on it. That's what I'm hearing, but you're going to do some other work on housing in general with this committee to present back in October. Have I got that right?
I think that's exactly my point. The cabinet meeting is next week, at which this is considered. So I'm not sure. There's no way that anybody's going to do any significant work between next week. Bearing in mind the whole of August is practically a dead month anyway, and for the longer term. That's why I said this meeting needs to make some recommendations here about what it's doing, rather than getting somebody else to make recommendations to come back. We're talking about it and talking about it and talking about it.
I mean, we are in a crisis, and we have people that are in unsuitable accommodation. So it's from my perspective, the sooner we can get on with it, the better. This acquisition strategy, it's fairly straightforward, in my view. Let's not let the perfect get in the way of the good. Perhaps that's what I'm trying to say. But any strategy can be revised at any point and updated. It doesn't stop it. It's not a dead document, is it? It's a living document, and we learn all the time, don't we? So that would be my, obviously it's, we work as a cabinet, work as a team, and housing is right across the, as you said, Councillor Stewart, it's every single councillor on this council. It's number one concern. So of course we've all got our views on it, but that's just seeking that clarity, really. I hope you don't mind me taking extra time up on your committee.
I think we all welcome your contribution. It's very helpful to have that consideration. I understand that Councillor Stevens has been waiting patiently to add something to our discussion. Councillor Stevens.
Chairman, a pearl of wisdom. We will continue to work, both Dawn and myself and team will continue to work to lessen the hardship and the homelessness on the Isle of Wight. We've got scrutiny and good scrutiny, may I add, this evening. Would you like me to withdraw it from this month's cabinet, where we can work on it, or you can work on it? We've still got work we can do, members. You know, and we're still working on it. So, you know, rather than put forward a strategy, you know, if you want us to put forward the strategy and then you amend it, that's fine. But would it not be more acquiesceable, if you like, to you to say, look, yeah, we can work on this, and we've got a couple of months now. We've got a little gap in our work plan, and we can come forward and we can meet and talk about it, and you can put forward some recommendations at the September meeting. Would that be more agreeable to you than us taking this forward and just saying, okay, we're going to put it forward anyway, and you know, obviously recognise what the situation is. We know we're in a dire place. We understand that. We also understand what there is out there, whether it be in East Cowes or another development, or indeed whether it's a rental provider or indeed a private enterprise, you know, developer. We know what there is out there, and we're still striving for that. What we want to try and do is take it forward to our finance people to actually say, look, this is what we've taken forward with an acquisition strategy, and it's been agreed through scrutiny and through the cabinet, and we want to see this instigated. Now, we can do that, as I say, or we can actually say, let's hold on for a while. Let scrutiny do its job, because don't forget, you're a policy and scrutiny committee, so you do assist with us to provide good policy to go alongside these strategies. I'll leave it at that, but it's in your hands, Chairman, and your committee. Would you like me to pull this from the cabinet meeting, and in which case you have a time to work on it, and then come back with some recommendations that we might well be able to consider to take forward with it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. That's a clear thought and a generous interpretation. I think there's going to be some consideration here and maybe some division between us as to the exact approach which we take. I will let the councillors tell me their thoughts, and then I will provide mine, and then we will make a decision as to where we go from here. We might as well start at the other end this time. So, Councillor Quirk, can I ask for your thoughts immediately on the possibility of providing recommendations on this acquisition strategy, for that acquisition strategy to be held until a following cabinet meeting, and obviously the task and finish group which we discussed?
I would prefer it to be held to the following cabinet meeting, but I think it needs a little bit more work, and I think better definition of how we're going to achieve the things would improve the paper quite dramatically.
Thank you. Councillor Love?
I gave some suggestions earlier on about putting timescales in and those sorts of things, some hard and fast things in a flexible way. I actually don't think, you know, I put myself in the place of a homeless person. 2 more months wasted where I'm homeless, where I'm waiting for accommodation, waiting for you people, sorry, I'm putting myself in there, waiting for you people to make a decision. Make the decision, take it to cabinet now, and then do as Councillor Evans has suggested, which is update it and refocus it as we move along. Let's stop wasting time. That's my view.
Okay, that provides one simple question, and Councillor Stevens and Councillor Jones-Evans can give us a brief thought on that. If we provide recommendations in the next few days, will it be possible to amend this acquisition strategy suitably for the cabinet meeting, which is shortly afterwards?
Chair, can I ask, how are we going to make recommendations in the next few days? If we are not meeting and cannot meet.
Email. We have records of what we've written down. We've got notes. If you, I would suggest that we can do things reasonably rapidly. As Councillor Quirk has suggested, we can put things on 2 pieces of paper.
You work, sir? Because I work and I've got a job to do, a big job. And what you're suggesting is that we try to scramble something.
Councillor Love, let me explain carefully, because you don't appear to be listening.
Been sat
carefully.
here nearly an hour and a half on this same issue. An hour and a half. Chair this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Love. As I explained, I wanted to understand whether the cabinet members could provide an altered acquisition strategy, which would do what you so desperately stated is to help people. If they could not do that, and it is impossible, then we would have to say that it should be held over to a next meeting. I think it is unreasonable on you to try and suggest that any of us are trying to hold anything up. Councillor Jones-Evans. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, me. I'm not trying to muddy the water, Chair. I'm trying to help the situation. You might gather that. What I would say is if you put together thoughts and considerations with possible recommendations with the cabinet report on the acquisition strategy, obviously it will be discussed and debated at cabinet. Now, I can't say whether we would include them or not, and you're aware of that. But what I would say is that I look for cross-chamber support, cross-chamber solutions, and see if we can take things forward. So I'm quite happy to take forward, and you're quite right. You can expedite quite reasonably if you need to over the next few days, and I'm happy to take that forward. But I'm also happy to, if you want to, defer it until the September meeting of the cabinet. What I would say is that whether it's an hour and 40 minutes, 20 minutes, or 10 minutes that you debate a strategy or a paper, Chairman, that is within your remit and your committee's remit. But what I would say is that this is a very important subject, and you're quite at liberty to take as long as you want to take and ask as many questions as you and your committee feel are necessary to get to the nub of the situation. And I welcome the length of time. As I say, it shows fantastic interest and also compassion that people outside of the council will recognise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. I'd like to bring in Councillor Beston here.
Just very quickly, Chairman, having heard what I've heard on the table just now, I suggest that it isn't delayed, but those who can, those who are willing, those that do have the time to make some recommendations, as the cabinet member, Councillor Julie Jones-Evans has said, it is a living, breathing document, not set in stone. So I can suggest I would like to see that happen. I don't think anyone around the table would want to see it delayed for the sake of delaying. It has to be right.
Sorry, Councillor Cho, just to completely be clear on this, this isn't my paper. I'm here because the cabinet are invited to this particular one. So, and I haven't got my colleague next to me, Councillor Stevens. I can't even actually see when his name comes up from here, unfortunately. But this is Councillor Stevens' paper. He'll listen to what you've heard this evening, and if he feels from that it's the better way forward is to to bring it to September, and that will be his decision from what we've listened. But I think what we all want is to start making progress in this particular area because it's so desperately needed.
Can I have a proposer then that we put recommendations forward for this paper for the Cabinet to consider? I have a proposer from Michael Beston, seconded. Okay. Do I have any opposers? Councillor Love was asking what we're recommending. The recommendation, the suggestion, proposal rather, is that we put forward recommendations as a committee to Councillor Stevens, who controls this particular acquisition strategy, and they take those recommendations, amend the acquisition strategy, and put an amended acquisition strategy before the next cabinet.
Chair, you said recommendations. What recommendations? You're making a recommendation that we make recommendations to the cabinet. What are the recommendations?
I can remember quite a few. I've written quite a few down. I'm sure that the written record which comes out, the recording of this, which will be, what, an hour and a half, will actually give those all out. I would suggest that we can put those together, and I have a proposer that we do that and a seconder.
You're asking me to vote on something that I don't know what I'm voting on. What are the recommendations? Speak them out so that we can know what those recommendations are.
I think there's little doubt in the minds of all of the committee members here that we have put forward suggestions, and we've had discussions with Councillor Stevens, Dawn, Councillor Jones-Evans and Director Ashman. That information has been collected. This meeting is being recorded. I would suggest that we accept that the recommendations which you specifically led, which was that we have hard targets, both for numbers and places, is included in the acquisition strategy. That is one of the key things. There are a number of other things which, I have to be honest, I didn't write them down because I didn't expect to be in this position where we were actually trying to help the Cabinet immediately. However, I've listened to the committee, and this is clearly the direction that we want to go in, which is to move things forward very quickly. So we have a number of recommendations which we can put forward. I will ask the committee by email to confirm that those are their recommendations. It probably will be nearer Councillor Quirk's 2 pages, but I doubt if it'll be any more than that. And then the councillors themselves can tell me as chair whether they agree with those recommendations or not. Now, that means that we cannot put forward a list of recommendations immediately. However, it does appear to be a way forward to allow the acquisition strategy to be heard in Cabinet in the very near future. So can I go back to my original suggestion, proposal, which is that we put those recommendations together and we put them forward for the acquisition strategy. Can I confirm, Councillor Beston, that you still would prefer that course of action? And can I confirm, Councillor Downer, that you're seconding that course of action? Okay. And then I come to you, Councillor Love. Would you accept that or not?
No, I'm sorry. I've never been to a meeting where I vote on something that I don't actually have in writing or have recounted to me. I've never been to a meeting ever constitutionally where you vote for something that you don't actually have a written record, written wordage of what you're voting for. That's what democracy is. I've never been to a meeting like that, so I won't support it.
Thank you. Councillor Quirk.
I will support it, but would appreciate before it's submitted that it is circulated to members of the committee.
That I can assure you will happen. If we can move on to the next item. Apologies, turns on again. We have before us the scrutiny of the adoption of the electric vehicle charge point infrastructure strategy. I'd like to invite my councillor colleagues to questions on this particular item. Councillor Quirk. Sorry, Councillor. Apologies, Councillor Bestons wants to start, so least I can do. Please do.
Quite happy to start, Chairman. So, quite a chunky, ambitious piece of work, to be said. Huge infrastructure changes over the long term. There's just a couple of things I just need for clarity, if you like. And one is the wireless charging and the vehicle to grid. Now, as this rolls out across the island, and what I'm trying to say is, would one kind of infrastructure, i.e. pods at the curbside, retrofitting of lamppost, plug-in, etc. It's a bit like, do I buy an iPhone with a charging lead, or do I buy an iPhone that I can just rest on a stand? If you can afford it, you'd buy the iPhone that rested on the stand. And so to me, there are some different options. I know not all the options would be appropriate in all places, but it's not a fear, but a concern is if we roll this infrastructure change out as regards to charging curbside in car parks, etc., and the wireless charging infrastructure technology really gets a grip, will one outstrip the other? Does that sort of make sense, Phil?
Thank you, Councillor Beston. You know what, I can't answer that because this is such a, believe it or not, a fast-moving environment with determination by government. I'm not sure if our targets are targets anymore. So I'd noticed our MP said they were advisory. I think that was his word. They were advisory net zero targets. So I'm not sure really if we're all heading down the same road here, trying to get to our net zero. But this is part of the council's net zero approach. It's part of a wider approach of community and society to reduce carbon emissions and move to more sustainable energy solutions. There are developing and many circumstances of which the paper. Forgive me 1 second because I didn't get the opportunity to present this. And it would be remiss of me, but thank you for saying it is an extensive paper. Our officers that worked on this, Jim particularly and his team, have done a remarkable job here with the amount of information, and that information behind it is an enormous amount of work to produce some of these pages of information. So it is a great piece of work. It's taken a long time. And it is slightly delayed, as you can see from some of the dates. So I really would like to thank our officers for the work they've put in on this. So thank you for bearing with me on that, Chair. But the strategy is the key points of the strategy is that firstly it's draft, so comments can be taken on board. That's absolutely right. We're trying to get this right in a moving environment. we've had some funding under Levi, the local electric vehicle infrastructure charging, 325,000. That is to provide delivering the strategy, and of which there is funding for an officer to help us deliver that strategy. That's part of it. The actual funding we can make bids for once the strategy is in place and accepted. And they'll come in the new year. Our main strategy is to partner up, as we have done already, with a commercial organisation. And the approach is, as you've, and is marked out in the strategy, and as you've mentioned, is quite wide. There are different charging facilities, slow chargers, rapid, fast chargers. There are sightings on street, off street, some in our car parks, and part of the strategy is to deliver more. Some on road where people do not have off-road parking facilities. It's a test, and we'll be testing to be able to deliver that infrastructure for essentially our larger towns on the island, in the centre of the towns. Nonetheless, the strategy is trying to deal with that. And then we're running in tandem with commercial operators. Already there are some 60, 70 private chargers owned by private organisations, supermarkets, hotels, and so on. And we're running in tandem with that. And then I guess the final thing to say is we don't really know what the demand is. We can take a shot at that and how quick it is. But part of the strategy is, it's a very good question, Councillor Besson, is to encourage people to have the confidence to switch their vehicles to an electric vehicle. And to do that, they've got to be confident that they're going to be able to get from A to B. We're quite fortunate on the island in that sense. Maybe not quite as fast as we would at times, but certainly get from A to B without having problems. So building that infrastructure is key, and the work I believe that our officers put in is pretty comprehensive, actually. Thank you, Chair. I hope that answers the question, Councillor Besson. I'm not sure if I did.
Beg your pardon. Of sorts. I mean, it's quite a fragmented question in that regard, but I do thank you. Just a quick supplementary, if I could, Chair. So you've mentioned third-party operators, the CPOs, I think they are. Just give us a brief outline of how that works. So does the third party supply the equipment? The Isle of Wight Council then undertakes the infrastructure work. And what's the split? Obviously, there's going to be a huge investment by the Isle of Wight Council, I would assume. And forgive me if it was probably contained, but I didn't quite get to the end of the paper. How would that split work? So
there are and were a number of commercial opportunities. We tended to go for one where there were less investment by the council for obvious reasons. We would prefer to do that through available funding, grant funding. And so we have tended thus far to opt for a share of the profits of the sale of electricity. But at the cost of the installations are at the cost of the commercial company.
Councillor Beston, thank you very much. That was very helpful and enlightening. And can I second what Councillor Dorden has said? I've gone through this with some degree of knowledge, having previously been involved in central government some 20 years ago when we were talking about rollout of charging. And this is a very comprehensive document. I'd like to invite the other councillors for any additional questions which they might have on this charging strategy. Councillor Downer.
Chairman, yes, Councillor Jordan. The chargers, how reliable are they? And how simple is it to actually pay for the charging? Thank you.
Didn't hear that, Roger.
How simple is it? It's not. Is it? How complicated is it to pay for the charging? Because I've heard of some people that have had trouble with it.
My understanding is that, don't worry, we're coming to Wroxall, Rodney, as well with our charges. So essentially what you do is have an account. It's almost a touch and go with a card or a phone. I think you can do it on the phone anyway. It's got to be simple, hasn't it? It's got to be simple. And it's got to be available, and it's got to be in some cases fast. But bear in mind that there are opportunities for all of the residents on this island, across the country indeed, who have off-street parking to provide for their own family needs. And I'm sure that's going to happen a bit as well.
Thank you, Chairman. I've seen in the press as well that and other reports, as at the BBC and that is there any possibility that the government would delay the 2030 a bit because they haven't got the infrastructure in yet?
Well, thank you, Chair. That's part of the conundrum of it all. How quickly should we deliver it? And our MP, I'm awaiting confirmation of whether it is a target 2035 or whether we can just maybe not do 2035. Maybe don't do it at all. I'm not sure yet. Yeah. Look, it's fast moving. The amount of vehicles on the island's extrapolating, but there's still low numbers, about 3% of our vehicle ownership on the island. We've got a way to go. And I do, I think to myself at the moment, how do we get it right so that we've got enough charging points to give people the confidence to actually, for their next vehicle, as people come up to consider changing their vehicle, actually make that decision to go electric. And you've almost got to be ahead. The trick will be with commercial operators as partners is to get them to make the investment before the actual demand comes in. And I think that's going to be quite a commercial trick.
Councillor Love, do you have anything to add to this?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you for this strategy. You are right, it must be an absolute nightmare really trying to keep up with the amount of changes that are happening. I think the important thing is to recognise that we've got our own population issues around this, and of course then the visitor tourist experience to the island. So it's a fast changing world. I guess my questions are more around the electric buses, the transport infrastructure itself, trying to get them to move quickly into position. I don't believe that we'll achieve this by 2025 or 2030. We'll be looking to achieve it by 2050, by which time it will have all changed again. But the aspiration is what really matters. And I think that this is a good aspiration, recognising it changes. But could you tell us something perhaps about where our, I will say commercial fleets, not necessarily the council, but commercial fleets in terms of people like Island Roads, people like the buses and other places and other large organisations are going? If you could give me just some.
Thank you. The bus operators, Southern Vectis, Go West, are already committed to electrification of buses. They have looked and are looking at hydrogen. I'm not sure where that's going. They are. We do have some problems with our geography that say Portsmouth and Brighton and Southampton don't have, where there tends to be, certainly Portsmouth, much flatter, less rural areas to serve for electric battery driven buses. When we get to Wroxall and Ventnor and have to go up and down the hills, it takes quite a strain on the batteries. And so I know that they're looking at both, but they are committed as transport operators, as all the operators are. We are in discussions with one of the ferry operators about shoreside electric charging on a new ferry as well. Rob's here from Island Roads. Is there anything you want to say about electrification? You've got got rid of your vehicles, haven't you?
Chair, I'm more than happy to give you some details.
Please do. Thank you.
From an Island Roads point of view, Island Roads had electric vans, the smallest variety from the beginning of the PFI, and some of those have now been renewed. I think on the general marketplace, if you look at vehicles up to what we would have known as a 3.5 ton pickup, is now actually classed as a 4.25 ton pickup under electric because you can carry more weight on it, which is a good thing. Those are much more readily available, and they're coming to the market thick and fast, and therefore is mostly availability will meet the demand of light vehicles, if you like. So the production has increased and the availability is better. Therefore, I think the affordability level is coming down on that type of vehicle. Once you start moving up, as Councillor Jordan has rightly said, hydrogen still seems to be the preferred option for something over 26 tonnes or 18 tonnes capacity. I must admit, I'm in the same position as you, Councillor Jordan. I don't know yet where hydrogen is going. I think there's a lot of work on it. There's a lot of things been done on it, but it hasn't yet. I haven't seen come to market. In Island Road's sister companies, there have been developments of a 7.5 ton vehicle, which was a trial, which was actually built bespoke. And also they'll take delivery in November of a 26 ton trial vehicle, all electric, to see whether that works, because somebody's got to take a leap forward and actually try something. Currently, anything above the sort of 4 ton limit is currently on the market at 3 times the price of a traditional vehicle, which for most operators who would just be doing the normal business, that's probably not viable. But as the availability increases and the prices come down in the marketplace. So I think overall, if it goes back to sort of charging points and things like that, the commercial sector will need much more rapid, ultra rapid charging with the capacity in them to meet the requirements of the battery storage in the larger vehicles. So that is something else. And then once you start looking at that, then it's the grid capacity. It's how much reinforcement does the electricity grid need to feed those types of chargers, because they take a massive draw. If you think of the size of the cable you have on a shower at home, it's a heck of a lot thicker than it is for a lamp next to your sofa. So we're seeing a lot of grid reinforcement work needed to get the bigger chargers in. But availability of actual vehicles is improving a lot, and the quality of them is improving a lot. Range is improving a lot. And therefore those smaller sizes will come down in price.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Councillor Love, please.
Just one very last quick. I think my real concern is about the impact on the tourist industry for the island, which is so important. So it's kind of a request really that we look at. So we know that Red Funnel are going to have to replace their vessels fairly quickly, because they're now quite aged and have already been stretched once. But it appears to me that perhaps the solutions could be onboard rapid charging in the hour that it takes to come to the island, and certainly more shore rapid charging at the 3 ports, so that we don't dissuade, if you like, customers coming to the island with their electric vehicles, which is better for our environment, and that would kind of be a priority for to make sure that we have accessibility so people are not dissuaded from that, whilst trying to address our own internal issues as well. That would be my only hope for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Love. That's quite a useful help. Councillor Quirk.
It seems a pretty comprehensive and sound paper, but none of us really know exactly what's going to happen with electric charging. The use of hydrogen is really dependent on the government's policy in terms of nuclear energy, because it's only economically viable if you make it from the spare heat that you get from nuclear power stations. So unless we have more nuclear power stations, hydrogen is not a particularly good option, but nor is electricity. We need to have an infrastructure that enables people to the confidence to use electric vehicles, absolutely. The one thing, because it is such an unknown future, I think we just need regular revisiting of the level of provision, because it's if you've got a commercial partner, they will probably be trying to drive that anyway. But if there's a surge in the number of electric cars, then they'll want more charging points. So that will probably be a self-fulfilling prophecy. One thing that does concern me is that with the electricity prices they are now, resistance to electric cars because of the cost of running them. They're not a nice cheap option now.
Thank you for that, Councillor Quirk. I don't want to say too much more. I'll just mention a couple of things. There's some mention of solar panels over car parks. That's actually, it's a more of mainstream technology. The other two are not mainstream at all. They're still in development phase, but that may be something that the council should look at on grounds, of course, that to put the infrastructure in, you then have an income stream, and an income stream for a council like ours is, well, it's gold dust. So that's one point. And you've covered the other points, so should we leave it there?
Thank you, Chair. Just if I just make comment, we were approached by just our small brush across solar panels across car parks. We were approached by 2 commercial operators, 2 different ones, and both would have installed the solar panels as part of their commercial investment. Your profits out of it are slightly reduced, but it seemed to me a potential strategy to adopt.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor, please.
Sorry, Chair. Just we've talked about the charging points. We haven't talked about actually, do we have enough power on this island and the power lines coming in to actually charge all the vehicles necessary? So we're looking at a trebling, if more, of power. So my question is, I like this document, but I'm asking a question about, do we have the network, the power network available to within what we've currently got as a system from, sorry, I'm trying to think what the network's called now, the power network, the grid, sorry. So we know that we've only got 3 lines that come into this island. So what is the strategy for updating those lines in order to provide more than 100 times more power coming to the island? And is that possible? Or will we actually be defeated by the amount of power that we can bring to the island? It's just a question.
Well, it won't be defeated by that, but we are in discussions about upgrade of the cross-Solent cabling. One is unused. We need a different approach. One cable's not used at all of the 3. One is used for when the power station up here is fired up. 10 days a year, 8 days a year in emergency type situations. There's that infrastructure needs looking at with the electricity grid providers.
But are the lines, is our highway network geared and households geared? Can they actually take the capacity of power required?
Pass. I don't know, Carl. Slow chargers overnight, 7 kilowatt, that's like an oven. I don't know, but if we've got 70,000 properties all with chargers, pass. I don't know. But I mean, it's got to work. Because we're not going from here to there. This is 10, 15, 20, 25 years. It has to work. We have to build it. And of course, we'll move more to sustainable energy supplies as well, which we hopefully might have on island or offshore island or, just out there somewhere.
Thank you for that. Councillor Beston wanted to make another comment, and then Councillor Quirk.
Just very quickly, and it ties in with my original question regarding wireless charging and vehicle to grid, and what Councillor Jordan and yourself were saying, Carl. is the vehicle to grid could actually help to achieve from cars going back into the grid, as I understand it. So that is one way of relieving the grid work pressure as regarding to supplying electricity. It wouldn't be a huge amount, as I understand, but of course, more cars that we get on stream using that particular type of technology could help to relieve it.
Thank you, Councillor Preston. I was just thinking as you spoke, the trials on wireless charging. I know in France they've tried it, and development in batteries and the technology of batteries. It's very difficult, isn't it, to look out in the future 30 or 50 years and get it right. But generally, business and government, whichever governments they are, come together to make sure we have to. We can't keep producing non-sustainable energy sources. We just can't do it. The planet cannot do it. It can't do it. So.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Councillor Quirk.
Just a very quick one. Where my daughter lives, where I used to live in West London, they've actually put into their local plans that if you build a supermarket or any large industrial structure, you have to put a number of charging points in. It's in their equivalent of the island plan. And I don't know if it is, can't remember seeing it, but if it isn't there, it should be in the island plan to say that if you build a supermarket, you put a car park in, you've got to have 10% of the parking spaces attached to a charging point.
And that is in, and so for new houses as well, sustainable, that electric charge put in every new house, which just makes sense. Sustainable houses, net zero houses with charging points. So you're absolutely right. I don't know how many supermarkets we're going to be building in the next 5 or 10 years, but I take you, the spirit of it is understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan, and thank you for those many questions. Having had the discussion we had before, I would suggest that there are some recommendations which we can put forward to assist the council. I would suggest that those include that there is a requirement for charging points for any future developments, that there is a recommendation that the council consider the ability of the charging network to charge cars coming into onto the island, and consider talking to the funnel operators about whether or not they would help. This is not to say they will do it, obviously. They have their own minds. But that is a recommendation to suggest that we talk to them. There is a suggestion that recommendation that we have regular updates on this particular substantial amount of work, and that the council look at the issue of grid capacity for charging into the future. There are a number of issues around that. There's a lot of technical stuff around both grid capacity and grid flow, depending on renewable energy development. Are we happy with those recommendations? Thank you. Supported? Thank you. Okay, that's been moved and supported.
They're very reasonable.
I'll always welcome support from anywhere. One issue that we do face is that 2 of our councillors will have to leave in a very short period of time, very shortly. I'd like them to at that stage, unfortunately, the meeting becomes in quorum because we don't have enough councillors here to continue. That suggests that we will not have time, unfortunately, to finish the final items, which is not what we wanted. Can I just confirm that the 2 councillors will have to leave at 7? Half 7. I'll take half an hour. Thank you. And I fully appreciate the time that councillors put in. And I'm not trying to suggest that they should hang on indefinitely anyway. It's bad enough listening to my voice for half an hour.
So I apologise, Chair. I've got a civic matter that I've got to go to.
Entirely understandable. Thank you. We will have time for at least one additional item.
Far be it for me to, I don't take any time up, but we have two important people who've given up their time to come and talk about 2 of our items. If you have that opportunity to move the agenda around to accommodate both, I certainly would be very appreciative.
I think I would be most keen to hear from as many people as possible. And I accept what you say entirely. The very next one is the island-wide digital connectivity anyway, so we have time for that. So I really appreciate your time coming here. I have to add here that I have made it clear as a committee that this committee is to view all papers before they come to committee, and it is unlikely that we will be able to consider items in future where we do not have sufficient paperwork. I think there is far too much time spent, and I've seen it here, listening to people and not being able to comment appropriately, because I think the first item here proves that we really do have an important role to carry out. Sorry, apologies. That's not directed at anybody in particular. It's just to put it on record that that is what we will be looking for in the future. John Irvine, thank you very much for being here. I'll hand over to you at this stage.
I have no paper to submit for you to approve. So, Councillor Love, I'd love to have heard this. I'd love to come and meet you sometime and update you. I have a presentation. So I've been asked basically to update you on Wight Fiber's Gigabit Island project, which feeds into the council's a digital connectivity broader strategy. So I have some slides that just paint a picture on the basis that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So just give me 1 second. If you will bear with me, I'll just give you a little bit of background on where we've gotten to with Wight Fiber as a company. So I don't want to labor this too much. I'll go through these really quickly, but I have a short video that will paint a picture and save me a few minutes.
So every company has vision, mission, purpose statements, just like the council. Wight Fibres is around making the Isle of Wight a better and more sustainable place to live, work and play, and to make the island one of the best connected places on the planet. So you've seen the video. What we are delivering, we think, is world class. I won't read all of this verbatim, but built into our company is a because we care ethos. So we talk about caring, we talk about broadband that just works, about getting it right first time, every time. I'll mention the sustain and recycle there. We do have a strategy to electrify our entire fleet by originally 2025, but problems with charge points has slipped that to 2026 now, and we have the same issues as island roads with the larger vehicles. They're simply not available, but fortunately for us, most of our vehicles are light vehicles. And our company values, you know, because we care about our customers, we care about each other, we care about the island's community. I'll talk a bit about that in a moment, and the island's environment. I've just mentioned our fleet electrification. We have incredibly high customer satisfaction scores. Our customers absolutely love us, and that's been benchmarked by the Institute of Customer Service. You can see some scores there. These are not for public consumption, but you can see that, you know, Wight Fibres score at 79 far outstrips any other broadband company, even any other mobile company, and that is supported by net promoter scores in the high 60s. A phenomenally high score. To give that perspective, Apple's net promoter score is in the high 40s, early 50s. We're investors in people. We want Wight Fibres to be a great place to work. We're investors in people silver. We were a hair's breadth of getting gold on our first application. So passionate about, we have about 85 island employees, about another 30 coming from off island who are managing the construction project. But long term, the company is employing between 85 to 100 islanders. We're going green. I've just talked about that. Our packages are affordable. We were the first broadband company in the UK to launch a social tariff at £16.50, the same product that the same 100 meg product. It's not a cut down product. It's the full product. First company, broadband company in the UK to automatically validate that with the Department of Works and Pensions. If you're on a means tested benefit, you qualify for this £16.50 tariff. You know, that's, you know, one of the challenges that we have is getting word out that we have this tariff. And we have talked with Chris about how we could maybe collaborate in promoting that. But that's around our digital inclusion. We want everyone to benefit from this new style broadband. And just, you know, some examples of how we market it. You know, we monthly rolling fuss-free contracts, no minimum term, which means no price hike at the end of the contract. If you want to leave at any time, 30 days notice. So we're putting our money where our mouth is on that. And we also guarantee the service with £100 back if you don't get the speed that we advertise. And that's the headline speed, not some calculation of the speed that you might get because of your distance from the exchange. So in short, we're really passionate about doing a really, really good job for the island and for the people that live here. So in terms of where we are in our rollout, hard to see, so just focus on the colours really. The blue bits are basically done. The yellow bits will be done by the end of this year. And when I say done, I say 90% complete, because we have a challenge in the island of unadopted roads that are not public highway. So we need a way leave to be able to go and do those. And we also have a challenge on the island. There are about something like 8,000, we call them MDUs, multiple dwelling units, blocks of flats, basically, which require internal cabling and so we also need way leaves to do those. So 90% complete means we could do 100% if we had all of the way leaves, but we have a solid strategy on how we're getting those way leaves. We've already got way leaves for about actually a total of about 20,000 premises out of the 80,000 need way leaves. We already have way leaves for 10,000 of those. So, you know, we're over the halfway mark in terms of build. And in terms of where we'll be by the end of next year, we'll be basically by this time next year, we'll be 90% complete everywhere on the island. And then over the next couple of years, but in the odd case longer, if we can't get a way leave, we expect then to take that up to 98%. So we expect 98% coverage of the island, which is a phenomenally high number. It's a number that you won't see anywhere else in the UK. We're very close to reaching it. Where we are as we speak, a bit of a chart that's hard to read, but we are in this is homes passed. I need to give you homes ready for service. Sorry, there's a slight difference. Without complicating it too much, we have about 700 kilometers of trench to dig. We've dug about 650 of it, so there's only a little bit left to go. And I think, you know, Island Roads will be very happy to hear that. Working really well with Island Roads the last year or two. We are getting near the end of our project. So 65,000 premises, because this includes business premises, by December, 75,000 by December 24, leaving that last 5,000 or so where we need way leaves, where we need permission to go and dig. So I've said by December 25, the reality is small numbers of those we've already have some landowners denying us permission to go and dig. So it may well be 5 or 10 years before they come round and eventually give us permission. So already by the end of the summer, we'll be down to one single contractor with around 10 crews that will see the project through to its completion towards the end of the year. And to put that into context, at a peak, we had 35 crews on the island. So a much quieter, slower paced project once we get to the end of this year. So I think a good news story for the island. The council strategy, always when I have these meetings, everyone goes, what about the bits that you're not doing? The reality for those is the cost of going down a big long country lane to serve one single house is phenomenal. This, as a rule of thumb, you're talking £150 per metre for building this network. And that doesn't, if you were 400 metres down a lane off of the main road, it's very difficult. So there will be alternative technologies, probably based on 5G wireless, maybe at an extreme, some of the new low Earth orbit satellites that are coming along. So 98% full fibre that will run at any speed you want, and then the remainder on gigabit capable wireless. So they'll be getting hundreds of megs rather than thousands. And just to put that into perspective, more than 1 or 200 meg right now is more than any household anywhere could use. So that's my spiel. I'm very happy to take questions.
Thank you. I'd like to ask councillors for any. I've got a couple of questions, not surprisingly, but can I ask Councillor Beston to start?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Great, thanks, John. Great presentation. You've spoken about your delivery as regards to hooking up infrastructure. Can I just ask what the take up? I'm not sure you mentioned that.
Sorry, we don't publish our customer numbers, but we are one of the more successful altnets. We refer to alternative broadband, alternative network companies. So we currently can serve 55,000 homes. The network is live. We get to the 65,000 by the end of the year, and 15,000 of those are customers so far. So we're adding, I think, this is confidential, so can I ask for it not to be minuted, but we're adding 500 new customers a month at the moment. Customers really are, our reputation is preceding us. When we move to a new area, you know, we have an immediate, 10% uptake because of our focus on customer service.
John, just make it very clear, everything we say here is recorded and is
I
on
know,
public record.
I do understand
So
that.
I understand that
So
you can't give
it's
us full detail.
okay, but okay. Too late now. I've let the cat out of the bag.
Councillor Downer.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, thank you, John. I'd just like to ask about, I've got some residents and I want to send you an email that I've received from them because they're concerned that they had, it was supposed to be installed. They got very low upload and download speeds and their internet is very, very slow. Wight Fibre has been up there, but they're not going to install it for a considerable time. Please, can I send you the email?
You can send it, directly to me, or we have, or just to, we have help at wightfibre.com. Any of those, it will get through. Or I'll give you you can have my personal email address straight after.
No, that's fine. I think I've already got that, but they've tried, the actual residents have tried that and to no avail.
So what they're saying we promise service, but we now can't deliver it.
Well, the particular road that they're on is a very busy road and it would have to have restrictions on it, but it's in the tourist season at the moment.
Yes.
But at the end of the tourist season, they made inquiries as to when that it was going to be done.
Yeah.
But it's not on the list.
And it's not an unadopted road.
No.
We do work, closely with Island Roads around permits. And this is Wroxall. We're doing Wroxall as we speak.
No, it's not Wroxall.
Oh, sorry. Where is it? Sorry.
It's in Leeson Road.
In which town?
Ventnor.
Oh, Ventnor, we have an absolute nightmare in
It's
Ventnor.
at the top of Leeson Road.
Yeah, so the story in Ventnor is, so most of our network is built in our own trenches. So we dig our own trenches, we put our own ducting in those trenches, and we then lay our fibre through our own ducting. In Ventnor, there's a thing in the industry where Openreach have been obliged to allow other companies to use their ducting. So for a whole bunch of reasons, partly how very difficult the dig is in Ventnor with all the windy, twisty roads and hills and lots of subsidence, we attempted to use BT's ducts and poles to build our network in Ventnor, and we have just hit tremendous issues with block ducts, poles that we can't climb because they've been condemned, and that meant that has really slowed down our rollout in Ventnor. So we are literally in Ventnor doing 20, 40 homes at a time. At the moment, it has been an absolute nightmare for us. So the uncertainty around dates for certain roads and streets in Ventnor is because we're trying to use BT Openreach infrastructure, which, because of its age, is in poor condition, and it's been very, very slow going.
Apologies for being parochial in a committee, but thank you for your very comprehensive answer.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Downer. I think we're all going to be parochial to an extent. Councillor Quirk.
The feedback that I get is very high degrees of satisfaction with the service, but very low degrees of satisfaction with the installation process. It works when it's there. It seems to work brilliantly, but the disruption caused, and I'll be parochial, coming into Shanklin from Newport. I live on Victoria Avenue, main road. The crew burst a water main, which can happen, but the route that was the alternate route, they moved to. So the only access from Newport into Shanklin was down a single carriage lane. Not very successful, and it did get sorted within a day, but things like that sometimes cause a lot of adverse comment about the company.
It has worked the other way around as well, where we've shut down our roadworks to facilitate emergency works, on the part of.
Yeah, but they started work on the second road.
Sorry?
The alternate route. The crew couldn't work on that road, so they moved to their next road on, but that was the alternate route.
I don't know the detail. I promise you, we do coordinate really closely with Island Roads, and we do react as best we can, when there are difficult circumstances. I don't think we've ever burst a water main. We burst numerous pipes into people's homes, because one of the challenges on the island is everyone has buried their infrastructure quite shallow. It's meant to be a certain minimum depth. It often isn't, no matter how much care we take. Mistakes do happen, and I know we have caused residents upset from time to time. But I think I hope that I think we get measured. People accept that mistakes happen, so you get measured on how well you respond when mistakes happen. And I think we do try very hard to respond quickly when there are issues. And for the most part, we're not perfect. I'm not pretending for 1 minute that we're perfect. And these are largely contractors doing this work rather than White Fibre employees, but we've worked really hard to ensure safe working, quality working, and when it goes wrong, we work hard to put it right. But there are times when it does go horribly wrong, and we don't do it as well as we would like to.
Just on the other side of that, certainly when working in Shanklin, the contractors have been really helpful with actually letting people in and out of their driveways. And people usually just complain, but actually on that one, the contractors were actually very good in terms of letting people in and out and putting ramps and things to get.
That is what they're supposed to do.
Thank you, Councillor Quirk. Can I just add a couple of things? First of all, as a fairly new councillor, lots of white fibres going around my ward, which is the largest ward on the island. And as I keep pointing out, we have a surface area slightly larger than Portsmouth. And I have spoken to White Fibre about a number of issues, and I have found your colleagues invariably helpful and considerate as best as possible. Things happen, things are dealt with. So there is no doubt that, while I've been a councillor, concerns have been raised and dealt with reasonably rapidly. So thank you for that on behalf of some of my residents. There is one little thing, and I have to admit an interest here, in that I am one of the not fibred people, and it's unlikely that I will be fibred because I'm in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And I was trying at one stage to understand how many people in my ward weren't going to receive fibre, and your colleague wasn't able to provide that for whatever reasons. Is it likely that you will be able to tell us as councillors who in their wards won't get it?
sorry, we don't, unfortunately, we work on technical network boundaries. So each of those big white cabinets can serve 1,700 homes, because that's all the space there is for the fibre that comes out of the ground. And so they're basically placed every 1,700 homes. And in a more rural area, of course, 1,700 homes are spread over a wide space. So we don't have the information at a ward level. We do have it at an island level. So there are, one of the challenges we have is how many premises are there on the island that need served? Because if you want to claim a percentage coverage, you need to know what the end point is. So, we believe there are 83,000 premises, which includes, by the way, so in that context, a car park kiosk is a premise. An ATM machine in a bank, although those are in decline, is a premise, as is the bank. It's two premises for the purposes of network planning. And those numbers come from Ofcom. So we can see, we have funding, and we can see way leaves permitted that we can do around 81,000 homes. So across the whole island, that leaves around 2,000 homes where where we don't yet have a business case for connecting them. We're just about to bid to an organisation called BDUK, Broadband Delivery UK. They have grant funding, and they've just announced, and the grant funding previously was available up to £1,000 per connected home. So the customer has to sign up and use our broadband, and we can claim actually £1,500 from BDUK. They have a new scheme where we can claim up to £4,000. So that now extends how far we can go, because we have, like I said, it's £150 per metre. So we're doing work right now to see how many more premises we can do, and we think that will get us to something like 98.7%. So then you're talking about maybe 1,000 or 1,500 premises across the whole island not being able to be served. So what that will translate into in your ward would be hard to say. We can try and give you an estimate, but it's likely to be a small number.
That's very helpful. My figures were that you're talking of at least 200 who you probably won't get near.
So, and where's your ward? Sorry.
I cover. Sorry, guys. Brook, Bryston, Calbourne, Newbridge, Shalfleet, Porchfield, Whitecross, Thorness.
So Porchfield and Thorness, when you look at that map that I had there a moment ago, is difficult for us. So they're basically 0%, incomplete and unplanned. So actually, of those 1,000 premises that we can't do, a lot of them are in your ward. But you can see that Bryston is, that's going to be 100%. Motterston, we're outside the MP's home as we speak, digging up his road. So Motterston, we're doing Shalfleet's already done and live. So you can see we will be doing Calbourne, and can't quite see where that is, just north of Calbourne. Is that? Oh, that's Shalfleet, isn't it? Yeah.
Sorry, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's helpful to know. I'm not trying to push you at this stage. I just wanted to ask the question about how many we're talking about. I think my ward is going to be particularly badly undersubscribed for a variety of reasons.
I have a version of this that goes down to individual properties. So I could sit and show you on a map which ones are planned and which aren't, and we could count them. So let me try and get you some numbers.
Okay, well, I'm not going to take any more time of you or anybody else on that. I appreciate your time. We can talk elsewhere. Councillor Beston would like to make a comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just very, very quickly, you mentioned unadopted roads, and I think all of us as councillors have got unadopted roads within their wards.
I live in one.
Rodney lives in one. There's several that I can identify off the top of my head. Although they're unadopted roads, they're actually quite well inhabited in that regard. I do understand £150 per metre, that's a considerable cost. But you did mention the possibility of additional funding for those type of properties? Right.
If it's densely populated, you can, if we can get a whaley from the owner of that road, we will go and dig up that road. So we are doing that routinely. And where we have a challenge is unadopted roads are actually easier. It's blocks of flats that are harder. So where we have the challenge is where it's really clear on the land registry who owns the road, or in the most extreme cases are, and there's more than a few of these on the island. The unadopted road is a cul-de-sac that goes down onto fields. Some clever person, in order to prevent development beyond the end of the cul-de-sac, has bought the road and they own it outright. And in one case, they paid £30,000 to buy their road with 20 houses on it. And they then denied us, they wanted to charge us £30,000 to lay broadband in the road. And we declined to do so. And we hope that pressure from their neighbours will change their mind over time. Or because he lives in the road as well. At some point, he might want the broadband and might change his mind. Elsewhere, it's for the most part, we're making good progress on unadopted roads.
So just quickly, supplementary on that. So you mentioned unadopted roads where you can determine the ownership.
Yeah.
I know 2 or 3 where there is no one knows who owns
So
that.
if there's no known owner, we will then simply go and do it. Which is what we did to Councillor Love's road. We knew the owner was a religious order in France that used to be I was going to say nunnery, but what's it called when it's
Convent.
A convent. It used to be the convent at the end of his road. They still own the road and weren't going to object to us digging it up and laying fibre. So we're being bold and, in an effort to maximise the rollout.
Sorry.
Very, very quickly then. So as regards to residents, if there is areas that you know that you cannot reach, are those residents being advised of that?
We have a checker on a premise checker on our website. So if you go there and there's no date for availability of the service, that's a good indicator that it's unplanned and we don't know yet. We don't know yet which premises we cannot do till we apply for this next tranche of funding from BDUK. And have the final list of premises, but even there, we're not giving up. We're still looking. If one of those is a farmhouse, and the farmer has a tractor with a plough on it, and he's happy to dig a trench, and we'll give him some fibre to put fibre into that trench, and he brings it down to the road, we will very happily connect them. So. We've done, I can think, one of those. We've done one of those already, where they brought probably a 400-meter long lane up to the farmhouse, and the farmer put ducting in up to his gate on the road. So we'll, it'll take time, but we will get to those. Do what we can.
Appreciate your time and comprehensive answers. That's extremely helpful. Unfortunately, that means that we are going to run out of time for our final 2 items, which is a slow-moving disaster. And I have to apologise deeply to both Rob from Island Roads, because obviously that is quite an important area that we need to deal with, and to Councillor Jones-Evans regarding the skills strategy.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry, Chair. It was just, I don't know how this goes. Perhaps our officers can help out. You can help out. If we're not making, if they're for sort of informational noting, can the meeting carry on just for information? I know we've run meetings before us with points of information rather than any decisions being made. It was just that point really, just mindful that everyone's sort of been here a while, but made the effort to come as well. So I don't know how we sit, and apologies for butting in. Sorry, Chair.
Councillor Jones-Evans, I really appreciate it. If we can get information out, and that's fine. My understanding is that we have to be corporate to obviously have a formal scrutiny meeting. Let me have a brief discussion with my colleagues from council to see what we can do. Okay, won't take a second. Councillor Quirk and Councillor Beston, who remain with myself, we can have an informal meeting whereby we have the information placed in front of us. However, the meeting itself, the formal meeting, would have to be drawn to a close and therefore would no longer be a public meeting. I'm more than willing to stay for some little while later. Would you like to carry on? And because there is a lot of information which has been collated for this meeting and a lot of effort to get people here.
I mean, time isn't an issue for me here tonight, although, probably 8 o'clock would be my limit.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is we will have to formally close the meeting now. Once we have formally closed the meeting, I will say on public record that we will take the additional submissions from Island Roads and on the skills agenda. We will not seek to scrutinise them at this stage because, to be honest, we do need as many councillors here as possible from the committee, and obviously most of them will no longer be here. If
it's helpful, Chair. So my paper isn't a decision paper. You're not helping me inform the cabinet decision that's coming down the road. I believe it's something that's on the work plan, and I can bring that back at any time you want if you want to be there a bit more. I was more mindful of our guests really, because I mean I spend most of my life in County Hall, but obviously this gentleman doesn't. So that's all. That's the point I was trying to make.
Okay, so we will formally close the meeting at 7:35, and then we will remain in this meeting to take information and discuss with Island Roads. And I'm grateful for Rob's patience in